Welcome to Sound Leadership with DJ, the podcast dedicated to exploring the essence of leadership. Here, we're all about connecting you with visionary leaders and trailblazers who have reshaped the landscape of leadership. In every episode is a new adventure. We walk side by side with leaders who have achieved remarkable success. We trace their journey from humble beginnings to leadership prominence, uncovering the challenges they faced and the wisdom they've collected along the way. In this episode, I am thrilled to feature Reneè Roberts-Turner, a nurse executive with a rich background in transforming the nursing industry through leadership, education, and mentorship. See, Reneè's interests includes leadership, nurse satisfaction, and providing equitable care. She is actively involved in anti-racism initiatives and holds various leadership roles in nursing associations. Reneè brings a wealth of experience and insights into being intentional in planning your professional trajectory, making this a conversation you won't want to miss. So, let's sit down and talk candid with Reneè Roberts-Turner. She's here to share her insights, her stories, her strategies that made her the leader that she is today. Sound Leadership with DJ wants you to stay engaged with our community and the latest podcast updates by following us on LinkedIn and on YouTube at Sound Leadership with DJ. Here, we extend the conversation behind the podcast, offering extra content, exclusive behind-the-scenes looks, and so much more. Ensure you're always in the loop by subscribing to Sound Leadership with DJ on your favorite platforms, including Apple Music, Alexa, iHeart, and so much more. Simply search Sound Leadership with DJ and hit that subscribe button and never miss an insight that could elevate your leadership game. Now be prepared to embark on this inspirational, empowering, and transformational journey. This is Sound Leadership with DJ. Welcome, Reneè. How are you doing today?
Hey, DJ. I'm doing well. How are you?
Hey, I was in there trying to introduce you, and as I always say, listen, I know it doesn't hold a candle to who you really are. So, Reneè, tell us who you really are.
Thank you, DJ. I am a nurse leader. I've been a nurse for many years. And I think very early on in my career, I realized that it was something special about leadership. I went back and forth when I was working on my doctoral degree, and I really was introduced to some phenomenal nurse leaders. And I think that kind of showed me or paved the way in my interest in terms of leadership. And so 10 or almost 11 years ago, I worked on my doctoral degree, and my thesis was all around, or my dissertation was all around nursing leadership, the perception of nurses to their nurse leaders' characteristics. So I've always been very interested, asked tons of questions when it comes around leadership. Why do people do what they do? And how does that impact people who they're leading, really? And because in the end, I always say a leader really does have someone's future in their hands. And so as leaders, we need to be intentional in terms of how we work and what we do for those that are working with us, those that we're mentoring, those that we're supporting. So I think I've always had this keen interest in leadership. And so I joke a lot. I don't read a lot of romance novels or anything like that. I'm always reading something around leadership. My whole collection of books is all leadership. So I study my craft. And my goal to lead is to help others really see possibilities that they wouldn't see maybe before, because I do believe anything is pretty much, you can do anything, when you put your mind to it and with someone behind you supporting you. And so that's really why I feel like I'm here.
Listen, so let's talk about the humbleness, because first of all, Dr. Roberts-Turner.
Yes. So it's funny. So so my journey for my doctoral degree began because my dad, before he passed away, he said, Reneè, you're a nurse. That's great. But I thought you wanted to be a doctor. And I was like, Daddy, there's tons of different ways to be a doctor. You could be a lawyer and you're a doctor. I said, and just because I'm not a medical doctor doesn't mean I can't be a doctor. And so he passed away. And as I really went back to school because of him, I felt like it was something that he wanted me to do.
Yes.
And I'm forever grateful for that, because I think what it did was it pushed me. I was finished with my master's degree. It pushed me to think about what I was really interested in and then become an expert in that. And that's what I say. My doctoral degree has made me an expert in what I study, and that is leadership.
So listen, I see you humbly put Reneè Roberts-Turner, but please allow me on this podcast to call you doctor. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Sure. I
You earned it.
know who I am, but I know, you know what I mean? I know I did. I earned, it's been many years, right? So when I first got out, I was like, I'm putting it on my license plate. I'm just, my girlfriend's like, don't do that. Somebody gonna see your car. And I'm like, oh, I was so, again, when you, because it's a big achievement. It really is.
Listen, I'm working, and the audience knows I'm working on my DMP. And, I have a newfound respect for anybody who has a doctor in front of their name. I don't care what it is, PhD, DHA, DNP, whatever it is. You've worked for it. You've earned it. And I think what's interesting about your doctorate and your journey is you took leadership to the next level, right? You became a truly an expert in the realm of leadership. And not many people can say they have the doctorate there and they dedicated their life to leadership. So as you talk about leadership, what really molded you into the leader that you are today? Because you didn't arrive as this expert. You didn't just roll out of bed and say,
No,
I'm
no, no.
Dr. Roberts-Turner.
I think it's a couple things. I think, first of all, having people that believed in me, right? I
Yes.
think I have been blessed to be in the right place, in the right time, and to be introduced to people that said, you know what, let me help this girl. She's a little bit off just a little bit. And let me guide her a little bit. I've been blessed. And then the other thing is, I am, to your point, I am humble. So I listen and I ask questions.
Yeah.
I think that has been my guiding principle. And also, I'm willing to shift. Now, if you met me 20 years ago, you'd be like, whoo, that girl, that Reneè Roberts-Turner or Reneè, she needs help, right? I don't know, but I think I realized, and I've had this conversation recently with my daughter who is 19 and she's in college, you realize that you don't get as much support. You're not going to be able to move to where you want to move if you're not willing to shift. And I think that that's something that I've learned, and I'm open to changing because I know what my goals are and I know the impact that I can have if I can move forward. And so sometimes we're in our own way, right? And if you can acknowledge, right, we're in our own way. And so I step back sometimes and I'm like, okay, check it or listen, right? Like, instead of you jumping to conclusions, you seek to understand, right? And so as you mature, and you start seeing, and then you start to see other people like, dang, she's brilliant, but no one is listening to her. Why is that? Right? Why is that? Yeah.
Listen, you dropped some jewels, and I want to circle back to it because what you said is you're not afraid to be malleable. You're not afraid to shift. And you said if you saw me 20 years ago, that was a different person.
Oh, yeah. I think they're like, oof, I don't think, I talk, they're like, is that the same Reneè? Because again, I was a different person. And I'm not saying I'm not that person because there's still some of it still in here, trust. But I do know.
Listen, we can't take it out of us. We can gain the education and all of that, but we are who we are at the core. But I think what you're saying is key, right? As a person, we have to be malleable. We have to be open to change. And I think from a leadership perspective, that's one of the key features that leaders need to have. They have to be malleable. They have to be open to change and open to other people's perspective. Would you?
Yes. I think so. So this takes me into something I've been thinking a lot about lately, and that is people's perception of you, right? So I think sometimes as a Black woman, I'm speaking from my own experience and from others that I've talked to, it's difficult sometimes when you are being perceived as a way that that wasn't necessarily your intent, right? So a lot of times we're in a situation and we may say something or do something and we're intentional about it. And then we get feedback that our intent, what they perceive is something totally different. And so you have these conversations in your head about, do you shift or do you not? Right. And so, depending on what it is, you may have to shift a little bit. But then the question comes, what about who I really am? And so lately, I've been thinking a lot about this, having conversations with some of the people I lead about how much do we have to shift, right? And still stay true to who we are in an authentic way. Yeah. And that's a very complex place to be because I think we as leaders want to be our authentic self. But if we're not showing up in a way where people can hear us or they're looking at us a little differently, we have to do something, right? And so it's a fine balance we walk. It's a fine balance. And I'm not good at, I mean, I think I've managed some of it, but
Yeah.
it's a work in progress, right? It's not, I haven't mastered it by any means, and I don't think I ever will. I think I will constantly be working on staying true to who I am, right? But also making sure that how I want to be perceived is how I'm being perceived.
You know what? Let's call the elephant in the room, right? You're a woman of color that's an executive with DR in front of her name.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is, and I talked about it in your intro, right? You work on anti-racism, diversity, equity, inclusion. Those are some of the areas that you kind of work on. And I'm sure that comes from some of the experiences that you've had as you've climbed the ranks in leadership. I know me personally, I have a leadership podcast. I love all things leadership. I'm passionate about leadership, similar to yourself. I'm working on a doctoral degree in executive leadership. But oftentimes when I'm in those rooms as a leader, I look around, it is just me.
Yeah.
It's just me on many levels. Whether it's a person of color, it is a male, it's a nurse in the room, right? It's just me, and I think that we have to continue to break barriers and change the status quo, and you're doing that. But are there challenges that you face as you're trying to break those barriers and change the status quo?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when you look again how you're being perceived, I think that's
Yeah.
one of the biggest one, and trying to advocate for others. Because, it could be, I'm going to give an example. A Black woman says one thing in a tone, and a white woman could say something in the same tone. And the Black woman is perceived as angry, and the white woman is perceived as assertive. And so, how do you, again, manage that? And what I've learned in some of the tools that I've been working just with myself and some of my team members is you just watch the room, see how it's going, and then you don't, your tone, look at how the tone is in that space, and keep it that even tone. Even when you're excited or something's jacked up, if somebody says something jacked up, you know what I mean? Don't allow your emotions to get into it. Remember that you are at work and you have an end game, right? So if
Whew.
you're at work and you've been asked to go to this meeting to deliver this content to get a decision made, don't allow your emotions to impact that, right? If you are on a call and you need them to say yes, and
Mhm.
somebody come at you sideways, you're at work, put it
Listen,
on and get it done. Get to yes. Whatever it takes, get to yes. And when I tell you people watch you do that, and then they can learn from you, especially the people that look like you can learn from you and how to do it again, how to navigate in that space. Remember where you are. You're at work. Now, if you was at Target,
listen, Dr. Roberts-Turner, it took me a long time to get to where I am, and I still have so much growing and maturity to do, right? I'm 35 now, and I got into leadership. Look at your face.
because you're so young.
So I'm 35 now, and I got into leadership. My very first job, I was 18, but I got into leadership at 19. And I remember getting into leadership, and I thought leadership was just having a vest and a whistle. Right? I thought leadership was telling people what they was doing wrong, and if I was telling people what they was doing wrong, I was doing everything right. Boy, was I wrong? Was I wasn't even trained, right? I was just given a whistle and a vest and told to be a leader of this group home, and everybody would listen and things would be great. But what I had to learn early on was to be inquisitive, not accusatory. I tell people that all the time. You can't. So why didn't you get that done? Right? You can ask that same question in a different way and get a different result. So if I say, why didn't you get it done? You feel attacked. But I say, hey, are there some barriers that preventing you from getting the job done? Can I help you? Can we look at what your day looks like? You're saying the same thing.
Right? I hear you.
But
But
I had
now they can hear you, because if you come at them like that, right, they can't hear you when you're, ah!
and
But yeah, they can
I
hear you.
was letting when people respond back because I'm accusing them. I was then letting the emotions that I had get in the way. Oh, I thought it was personal. They didn't want to listen to me, but they listened to so and so.
Yeah.
So I resonate with what you're saying. First of all, people are always watching you, and I learned that at 19. They were always watching. Who's this young cat, right? And I learned that I have to be purposeful in the way that I move,
Mhm.
and Always be on point because people are always watching, and then they go back and talk and they share, and then they start to, do what they do best. So I'm sure you've experienced that, and because that people are always watching, and like you said, you can't let your emotions get the best of you. But is there a time in your leadership career, in your leadership journey, that maybe you didn't make a favorable decision, or a decision didn't go the way that you wanted? How did you handle that?
So what you were talking about in terms of how people talk about you, I call that street cred. And even in work, I call it street cred. What people are saying about you behind you when you don't even know what is street cred, right? So everybody wants to have a good street cred. I know I do, right? So I want people to be talking positively about me. I think what I struggle with, and especially very early on when I was leading others, is my expectation is high.
Yes.
I am not going to fail. Okay. Because the weight I feel on my shoulder for success is heavy. Yes. And so there's been times where I have, because of that pressure I put on myself, I then put it on my team. Right. And so working with others who may not have that same level of expectation on themselves is difficult for me. Working with other people who may not have that same drive as I do is sometimes hard for me. And probably over the last 2 years. And so I've had some difficult relationships with those individuals because then I was wrong with them. How come they don't see this?
What's the name you came up with? I haven't heard that one. You said Judgy Judy?
Judgy Judy, yeah. Like, what's wrong with them? They don't see how great that we can be. Why are they not on board? They got a problem, right? And I think, and so I can admit that I have done some things that I probably look back on and they weren't the best in terms of leadership, right? Yes. So pushing people to the point where they're like, I got to go. This lady, I can't work with her. Yeah, she's too much. And I apologize. If I seen them in the streets today, I'd be like, my bad. Yeah. Now that I see, because it's not for everyone, and learning how to work with different people. I think because I grew up as an athlete and push, but not everybody was there. I've worked with people. One of my team members, I'm like, have you ever done any team sports? Because in a team, we work together. He was like, no, Renee, I did swimming and tennis. I said, I think that's a question I'm going to start asking people, because I think that tells you a lot about people. So I think just those little nuances, and I've learned those one-on-ones sometimes when they weren't acting how I thought they should, or not moving, it was not good. Yeah. But as I reflect, I can see now what I should be doing. And moving forward, now I see, I work with some people and I realize I got to check on them every day.
Listen. And I had to learn. So a couple of things, right? When I moved to Hawaii, I landed at a rural hospital here in Hawaii. It's no longer in existence, I don't believe. But one of the things the CEO would always say to me is, Jay, that you can get things done. And he was just talking in general, right? He was sharing his leadership philosophy. He wrote 2 best-selling leadership books on Amazon. And he would always say, right, there are 2 types of leaders. There are leaders who get things done, and then there are leaders who get things done, but there's a trail of bodies behind them because they're slaying to get things done. And he said we should always strive to be the leaders that are getting things done and not having a trail of bodies behind us. Right. And there's no secret. That's why I have a leadership podcast. I want to talk to great leaders such as yourself and learn to be an even better leader. There's no secret. DJ used to get things done, but that trail,
me too.
Back in 2012 and 2013 and 2014, whoo, it was bad. And I had a reputation for being the cleanup man. And I realized that although I enjoy being a cleanup man, there's a certain way to do it. You can clean up with respect and dignity. Yeah. One of the things that I had to learn, and I'm still learning, I never raised my voice. Nobody's a child. Nobody's none of that. But what I would do is, my wife would always tell me is, I have a certain way that I speak, in a certain way. And she said, you become very short. And I had to realize that and catch that. And I'm still working on that to this day, because to your point, I think people should be here and we should be striving together to go here. And for me, it's the love of patient care and outcomes that I'm doing. But what's the sense of trying to achieve this if your employees aren't happy? Right. You're never going to get here because your employees aren't happy. Your turnover's through the roof. People don't want to work for you. They're walking around on eggshells, and who suffers? So here I'm trying to improve the patient outcomes, and it's never going to happen.
Right. DJ, you know what I call that sometimes too? The casualty of leadership. And the reason why is when we first started, I said, I feel like as leaders, we have people's professional futures in our hands, right?
Yes.
And so when we do something where it pulls them back, or they're not and to your point, they're not happy, there's casualties in that. And I've talked a lot about this with one of my mentors, because I said, how long do you leave a bad leader in a position when when you got turnover? How much casualty, they call it turnover, but I call
Yeah.
it like they're leaving, right? Like a lot of money. How long do you leave a leader in a position who's not effective? Like, and why? And so, we should really be looking at that, looking at the style and what they're bringing, and yes, the outcomes. But if the outcomes are like 110, and then you've got turnover at 75%, there's a problem, right? There's a problem. So I think, again, you get to a place where you realize, okay, look,
Yeah.
I can't have all these people behind. I'm leaving bodies. I've got too many casualties based off of me, and then you realize too, sometimes, and this is the other thing that happens a lot with leaders, they got to be in the front all the time, right? Or how are we bringing up the next generation? How are we helping them? I put my people out front. I've had my day. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to support, and I'm going to give you feedback, good and bad, but I want you out front, because we work behind the scenes to get you ready to be in the front. And I think sometimes people misdiagnose or title something leadership. I have to own everything. I have to be everywhere. But the truth, to me, the true sign of leaders is that your followers can lead when you step back. I'm on vacation, and I know my team is moving it.
Listen, you said a couple of things. So you said a lot. So no, amazing dialogue from Dr. Roberts-Turner. And one of the things that I talk about all the time is leaders in power or positions, and they're thinking that the culture does not start with them. The culture starts at the top. It starts with the leader. And what I heard you say is turnovers through the roof. How long do we leave that leader there? And I think a lot of times their boss, they are looking at the outcomes. Oh, but they're achieving such great outcomes, and they're not looking at the turnover. And it becomes hard to value a turnover, because what price do you pay on turnover? You and I know there's a cost associated, but do we really know the total cost associated with turnover, from the point of the physical position being open? And I'm diving deep into the economics of it, right? To the point where you spend time to email somebody in HR to post a position, they post, they screen, they interview, call a receptionist, they walk through the door. All that is time and money, but we can't put dollars and cents to that. So it's sometimes hard for leaders to equate the actual value lost once that employee leaves, right? We know what it costs to acquire a new employee in theory, but do we really know the indirect cost it costs to acquire a leader? And because of that, I think if we were able to put a dollar to that, leaders would look at it differently when they have people causing high turnover. Because if each turnover, we were able to say each turnover was $15,000, you'd be like, hold on, you had 10 of them.
Yeah. And again, I think when that happens, how are we supporting that leader, right? At some point, after 1, 2, 3, okay, it's time for an intervention, right? And so that and then we can set some expectations. But I do believe sometimes we leave leaders in place, and there's a lot of casualties, whether it's casualties in their team or casualties with the teams they work with, right? So now, because this person is in this position and it might not be a good fit, the people that they work with are like, ugh, I don't want to be bothered, right? And so then what's the trickle down in terms of the overall working environment, right?
What you're saying is powerful. And I think what's interesting when we talk about leaders in the positions they are, can I call out another elephant in the room?
Please.
A lot of these leaders get the position because who they know, or nobody else applied for it.
True.
And it was like, well, and I need to fill it, because if not, I'm gonna be sitting in a seat, and I got my work to do. So let me just put a body in a place, somebody with a boss. Because how oftentimes are leaders elevated into a leadership role and given the training that they need to have to be successful?
That's rare, I would say. And I think the other thing is, and again, I take these jobs as leaders very seriously. And I always say to my peers and to anyone I lead, if you're in this role, you need to study your craft. If you're a leader, you should be studying it. That is on you. Just like when you're a nurse, right? If you're a nurse and you're in med surge, you are expected to get CEUs and all of that stuff. As a leader, you should be investing in yourself. whether it's a coach, whether it's reading a journal article, something. You should know what's happening and be constantly doing some self-reflection, because your work is to guide others, right? And so if that's your work, then you need to make sure you're guiding them appropriately.
Listen, but I see when I was doing some research on you, right? Obviously, you have the doctoral degree, but you also have some certifications. To your point, you talk about getting CEs in advanced education. You're a board certified nurse executive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, because if you're going to lead, I feel like that's something. Again, I'm saying I'm an expert in leadership. This is what I do. This is what I love, and so
Yes.
therefore, I want the credentials that align with that. And so, the board certified nurse executive is one. Also, I've been doing quality improvement since, oh goodness, I do my years by my kids. So my son is 14 before he was born. Over, almost 20 years, I've been doing something in quality improvement. And so I have my CPHQ as well, and I will hold on to that as long as I'm doing quality improvement work. Because again, I feel like that's another way to demonstrate your excellence. I don't want to have a whole lot of certifications in education, but I do want to be purposeful in what I have in terms of aligning with my work.
And your work is definitely needed, right? We need leaders like you who are not afraid to roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, because so many leaders, as and I'm sure you're aware, right? They get to those levels and then they don't leave their office.
Mm-hmm.
They don't continue to do the things that they've done to get them there. And I think as leaders, we have to continue to interact with our staff and continue to perfect our craft as you have done and as you continue to do. I love what you said, right? I'll continue to hold these certifications and gain this education while I'm doing this work. And at the end of the day, as I always say, who benefits? The patients benefit. If you're in healthcare, the patients benefit. So, Dr. Roberts-Turner, you have all this experience. You have taught around the world. You have hosted seminars. You grow new leaders. You are a leader in yourself. You're a nurse executive in yourself. What's next for you? I know that you have your own business. I know that you host webinars and things like that. Talk to us about what you do, your craft, and how you help move the next generation forward.
So this is something I'm very excited about. I tell this story because it's funny how things happen. Like a lot of times in my life, I plan it and then something else happens. That's just the way it happens. So I was preparing for a presentation last year, and I was thinking to myself, I need a framework, because I had started to do some social media stuff about leadership, and I felt like I needed something to help me talk about what was up here. And so I drew it out on paper, and I came up with something called the diamond model. And so the diamond model is something I felt was needed, because a lot of times, specifically in nursing, we talk about nursing excellence. And so nursing excellence, of course, is this grandiose things that organizations or an entity may have that talks about the excellence that nurses provide in the care or their environment. So I felt like what was missing is, what about me as an individual? So what does it look like for me in terms of my excellence? So the diamond model was created to really talk about you as an individual, so that you have what you need to contribute to the overall global nursing excellence. And so the diamond model has 7 components. The first one is personal excellence. The second is leadership, followed by mentors, education and development, evidence and practice, really looking at evidence-based practice and how we use that in our practice, networking and relationships, and goals and outcomes. And so I created this model. There's a book that's aligned with it. There's also a workbook I'm in the process of getting published. And then I've had my very first workshop, which is up here on March 23rd, where we dove into the diamond model, talking about resilience, and then also leadership and perception. I also interviewed Tanya Jackson, who is the executive director of the Black Nurses Association, and she talked about her journey as a Black nurse leader, specifically the various jobs she's had. She was actually an entrepreneur before people were entrepreneurs. I said that to her. I was like, you were an entrepreneur before we even talked about it. Like, I didn't even know what that word meant. Very early on, like I would say probably almost 20 years ago, 25 years ago, she had a business and she ran it for many years. And she talked a little bit about that and how she made a shift back into industry. So my goal with all of these workshops is really to help people identify their professional excellence by looking at personal excellence and all the components under professional excellence, to really drive and be a great advocate to advance the global nursing excellence. So
Wow.
that's what I'm working on now. And I'm hopeful, my goal is to have a podcast coming up very soon. I'm so grateful to DJ for introducing me to some of this world of podcasts. Old school. I'm like, what podcast? But I know that that's something that I feel like people will be interested in. And then my ultimate goal, I'm going to put this out there because then it's going to have to happen.
Yeah, listen, speak it into existence.
Is I want to have a conference all around professional excellence. And again, diving into self and making a plan and being intentional in terms of our goals, in terms of where do we see ourselves in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Where do we want to, like, I know where I want to be when it's time for me to retire. I ain't there yet. So I'll be working until I get there. But early on, I started having conversations with myself and with my mentor about this is where I want to end. And this is what I want to leave in terms of my legacy. So, yeah.
Listen, you out here doing it, and I know our podcast streams all over, right? Apple Music, iHeart, and some of them can't see the screen. So, while we were showing, the screen, your website, tell people how do they reach you? Shout out your website, shout out your Finsta, whatever you got.
Yes, ReneèRoberts-Turner.com is my website. And I'm actually on Instagram at Reneè Roberts-Turner. And then also my LinkedIn, Reneè Roberts-Turner. It's pretty much easy to find. Just look me up, Reneè Roberts-Turner. No hyphen, just all the letters run together.
Listen, you have been a joy to have on a podcast. I'm so grateful that you're taking time out of your day to meet with me as we draw this to a close. If there's someone out there who are thinking that they want to get into leadership, but they're scared, they're nervous, they don't know where to start, what advice could you leave them with?
I would say for them to look around and to see if there's anybody that has any skills that they see that they would want to emulate. Or for them to talk to a leader, because there's got to be something that made them think that they want to be a leader. Have a conversation with their boss or with a leader that they may know about it, and then start thinking about where they see themselves, and if they can find a mentor that help them figure out what that trajectory might look like. That's what I would say. I think having conversations with people to help navigate, and I'm sure they can help you identify what would be next, and in terms of some steps for that.
Listen, we're going to have you back for round two, because you drop so many great jewels for people who are wanting to get into leadership, who are in leadership. You highlighted, employee turnover, which is, something that often we don't look at, right, as a sign of a bad leader, right? Once again, we say, oh, it's just the culture, but leaders drive the culture.
They do.
So how is it just the culture, right? So I'm sure, you have, other talking points to that. And one of the things that you mentioned as to a close again is that you host kind of events and things. So that was one event. Do you have another event coming up? Any other events coming up soon?
Absolutely. We have podcasts coming up. So I have one on, I knew you were going to ask me this, I think June 17th. And one on May 15th at 7 p.m. If you follow me on Instagram, I posted. I also posted on LinkedIn as well. And then moving forward in June, we're going to have another live event. I think it's the last Saturday in June. And so we're going to that we do 2 virtual and a live event. And with all of these activities and engagements, we will be giving away, you'll be able to earn continuing education units as well.
Hold on. You're not going to just gloss over that because I'm a whole registered nurse now. We need those. So you got continuing education credits for nurses?
Yeah, so for all of my activities, because again, I want, I'm all about professional development, though we know we need those continuing education credits for our license. We need them for certification. And so any event that I put on, we will be providing continuing education units. So please check out my website. I'll be, I think this Wednesday, I will be posting the upcoming virtual event. And that will allow you to have one continuing education unit once you've listened in.
She's not playing. And to the guests out there, you shouldn't be playing either. Leadership is something to be celebrated. We need great leaders in the field. And Dr. Roberts-Turner is an exemplary example of what an amazing leader is. So thank you for joining me here on this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Listen, I'm gonna do it again and again because listen, your voice, the way that you approach leadership, your diamond model that you spoke of, is amazing. And I think that once again, The world should know about it because we need great leaders. We need people who are dedicated to leadership as you are, right? Here you are, you have a doctoral degree, right, in leadership. You have several certifications that just, once again, proves you're a leader. You are hosting webinars, seminars, and giving out continuing education credits to nurses, right? It just demonstrates your nurse excellence. So thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you much. And thank you for this platform. This is awesome. All about leadership. So you know I'm in love.
Well, thank you to the guest for embarking on his leadership journey with us. Today's episode has been filled with insights, inspiration, and wisdom from Dr. Roberts-Turner. If today's conversation sparked a new ideal, inspired action, or simply left you wanting more, we invite you to connect with us. Explore more of our world by following us on YouTube and LinkedIn at Sound Leadership with DJ, where the conversation continues and the community thrives. Don't let this journey stop there. Subscribe to Sound Leadership with DJ on platforms such as Apple Music, Alexa, iHeart, and so many more. Simply search Sound Leadership with DJ and hit that subscribe button. As we part ways today, remember, leadership is a journey, not a destination. Keep striving to learn and grow and never give up on your goals. We're honored to be a part of your leadership voyage and eagerly anticipate welcoming you back for more great talks on Sound Leadership with DJ. Until next time, keep leading, keep growing, and remember, within Sound Leadership with DJ, you're always in good company.